Right. Good evening. It's Tuesday. It's cheese night. Welcome, all you lovely people. Lovely to see you people there again. It's always a pleasure to take time out of my busy schedule and talk cheese to the wonderful internet. I hope you are all enjoying yourself. I hope you have got a little bit of brandy. I hope you've got a little bit of cheese to taste. If not, I have my favorite brandy specialist here, Drew Baker. He's not actually technically a brandy specialist, but I have seen him consume so much brandy that if he's not there by pure dint of volume consumption, I don't know who deserves the title. So let's go and find him. Drew, are you there?
I am indeed, Charlie. Hello.
You look like you've had quite a day. Is that fair?
It's been a long old day, Charlie. We've been as much of my life is spent this day. It's at a slicing machine, slicing charcuterie and packing it into 50 or 75 gram packs, which, as it turns out, can become quite boring.
No, really?
I lie not.
So I don't know if everybody knows this, but you started your brand with Tom 2 years ago making charcuterie. Is that right?
Okay, yeah, coming to year 3 now. But yes,
wow.
In its infancy, we set up Tempest Charcuterie. We we built a site. We started doing our thing. We kind of been perfecting or fine tuning it, and then the kind of world caught fire, and the pandemic was sort of front and center, and we've had to kind of readapt the business and restructure it to sort of change the way we sell the product. Obviously, not what we do, and that's proven to be quite challenging in terms of hours, but the survival of the business is the key.
Yeah,
and so yes, it does change the way things are, but it's good to be busy, right? I mean, God forbid it was the other end of the spectrum, which a lot of people are in that position. So, I'm not going to complain. It's different, but it's busy, and it's we just have to make the most of the situation, really.
I mean, I don't want to dwell on it. We want to get on some cheese and brandy, but
yes,
I've spoken to a lot of charcuterie people, and a lot of your sales go into food service, which has collapsed.
Correct. Yeah, overnight we kind of lost all the restaurants, which was a large proportion of what we do. So we very, as a small business, we're able to be quite nimble and actually readapt and refocus and divert resources. We'd furloughed all our production. We stopped production, and then we just kind of used the stock we had in our aging room to kind of get us through. And now we're looking at bringing people back off furlough. One person, we've already done that. We're doing that with the others. So by the end of June, all of our staff will be back to work.
That is awesome news. That is fantastic news.
Yeah,
and the pigs too.
And the pigs too. Well, the pigs are less excited, but they, because it ends less well for them. But
it does end less well for them. Right. Well, let's drink to success. How about that? Or if not success, let's just drink anyway. Does that work for you?
Works for me, Charlie. You know me.
All right. So, have you got both bottles? The nice people at St. Remy have sent us some booze, haven't they?
They have.
Right. So this is the beauty of social distancing. They've had to send us one each, which is because one possibly wouldn't be enough between us.
What's the other one?
I've got an XO. Oh, so have you. Marvelous. Right.
Are we not drinking that one?
What did they send you? That's 3 bottles you've got there.
This is a cask finish collection, which I've just written quite complex and lengthy tasting notes on.
Oh, fantastic. Well, okay. Well, you're the boss. Let's get a bit brief about brandy. So French brandy comes in 3 styles, right? Just French brandy, which is across the country. And then we have cognac and armagnac, which are terroir-based brandies down in the Charente.
Correct. Now, as far as to my rudimentary knowledge, I also believe that Armagnac is distilled twice and Cognac 3 times. I might be wrong.
Okay.
And I think there might also be a grape varietal element at play as well.
Yeah.
Just to throw straight off the bat, I've got to say I'm less expert than enthusiastic partaker of.
Yeah, no, I remember going down to visit Cognac in my youth, and the big takeaway for me is that smell, the casks, the wood, you know, that kind of alcoholic dust that gets into your hair. I mean, it's an amazing. Right.
Yeah, no, it really is, and I think it's one of those drinks that I think people can find quite intimidating, because there is a lot of flavor packed into it, and it can, you know, if you're not used to spirits, it can kind of almost over deliver and kind of overwhelm the senses. So I think, you know, trying to sort of break it down into slightly smaller bite-sized chunks to kind of digest, and actually pairing it with cheese is a really good way of doing it, in a way to make it less kind of front and center and slightly less intimidating.
And so for the average person out there, perhaps who hasn't drunk brandy before, do you water it down? Do you add Coca-Cola? What's the etiquette?
I mean, for me, it's as is. I drink it straight. I drink it at room temperature, because I want, you know, I don't want it to deliver something watered down or something cold. It's definitely not for me a kind of long, tall, refreshing drink. It's something that's to be kind of pondered and taken your time over. And actually, it's one of those things where after a long meal, after a long day, actually, that kind of feeling, you take your shoes off, you sit down on the sofa, you sit back. It's been quite an overwhelming day, and you just want to kind of almost refocus all of your senses. A glass of cognac is ideal. A glass of brandy is brilliant, because there's so much going on. There's so much complexity that it almost kind of disengages that part of your brain. And you then start focusing on that, and you start sort of picking up nuances of different flavors. And actually, once you've got over that initial shock of the kind of, you know, your first, if you kind of just go out and have a big gulp and breathe in as you do
let's, I think we'll demo. I think it's time for a demo, isn't it? Which one should we start with, Drew?
We'll start with the VSOP.
Okay. So I'm getting a sort of a winey caramel note.
Yeah, I mean, I think once you've got it in your glass, I'm not using balloons. I'm just going to use tumblers for this. You can, by all means, if you've got big balloons, use those. But what you want to do is have a swirl of it. Don't, if you've never drunk brandy before, don't shove your nose into it and breathe in deeply, because all you're going to get is a hit of alcohol fumes. And actually, you're going to think, wow, this is just alcohol fumes. Give it a little swirl, and then hold it maybe 4 to 6 inches under your nose, and actually you'll just start to get wafts. But behind the alcohol, you'll start to pick up, there's kind of orange to me, there's a bit of citrus.
Okay, yeah, I get that.
And now
orange and orange peel.
A little bit of actually get closer to it. Now that initial kind of shock, that initial wave of the booziness has kind of dissipated. There's orange peel, there's caramel. To me, there's a kind of bit of vanilla.
Yeah, no, definitely vanilla.
There's a lovely kind of woody
not extract, that kind of vanilla that's still on the. I think for me, there's a lot of similarities with whiskey here, because you've got I mean, it's sitting at that punch level at 40%, but
there is
the flavors roll in behind it. So I'm a whiskey man. That's my sort of go-to, really.
Yeah, but I think it's it is. If you're a whiskey drinker, it'll be ideal, because you're not sort of scared off by that huge boozy kick. But the other thing you get with good brandy is there's a texturally, it's kind of not oily, but it sort of coats your palate. It feels sort of thicker and richer, and it's also, there's a bit more sweetness to it as well. Not cloying, but more. So
I want to try something. I was drinking mezcal the other day with a professional mezcal drinker, as you do.
Yes.
And what they recommended you do is you put a little bit on your hand like that.
Yeah.
Rub your hand. This is not a COVID moment. It's not a COVID moment. But it allows the alcohol to burn off a bit, leaving the flavors to come through. I have to say there's still quite a lot of, but it is. The flavors become a bigger part of the experience.
For those of you who are children, don't tuck your kids in immediately after doing this.
No. Right. Okay. So that's introduced us. So it's a punchy drink with we're talking fruits, we're talking vanilla. I think there's a woodiness to it.
There is definitely kind of, but it's like cedar. It's kind of that kind of really mellow kind of woody smell. It to me, and you know, there is there's not quite a smokiness, but there's more. But it'll evolve and it'll change. And actually, as you sip that, as the alcohol evaporates, there's more and more flavors going to come off that and come out of that, and it will change and evolve. And the other thing is, there's no wrong answers. If you smell apples or lemons, don't let anyone say, "Oh no, that's nonsense." It's so subjective.
Well, that's something that very much we teach at the Academy of Cheese, is that learning to interpret any flavor, whether it's an alcohol like this or a cheese, is accessing it through your experience and using your reservoir of knowledge to give it a description. So I mean, I hesitate. I mean, like, I've done tastings with whiskey, with gin, with vodka, with rum, with tequila, even doesn't work really, with cheese. And the issue in my mind is that early hit of alcohol can knock back the cheese to the point where you're not getting it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And when we spoke about this, that was our initial concern, is that how do we do this? Because if you for wine, for instance, you wouldn't struggle at all. If you had a mouthful of cheese and you took a slurp of wine, that would work. There wouldn't be any. I think here, if you've got them going concurrently, I think it can overpower, and especially when we go up the scale of the cheeses we've got. I'm guessing you're going to introduce what we're going to be tasting cheese-wise, but when you get to the punchier end of the profile, if you're to have a mouthful of that cheese and a slurp of that brandy, you'd almost certainly overwhelm your palate, and I think the result probably wouldn't be particularly pleasant. So I think it's a case of echoes of both as you enjoy both, not necessarily washing one down with the other.
Sort of a ping pong moment. Go cheese, go brandy. Go cheese, go brandy.
Exactly.
Okay.
So what should we kick off with, Charlie?
I've got 4 cheeses. You've got 3. We wanted to get something with a sweet hint, and I've had to pull out a bit of good Gouda for that, of VSOP Gouda. We've got Montgomery's cheddar, which have no or nearly no sweetness in it. So a savoury, salty trial there.
Yeah.
We've got Beaufort, the French, arguably the best French Alpine cheese, but very arguably. And we've got a Roquefort, which you think is a wild card. You're not seeing a result there. You think that's an outsider?
I think it's an outsider, but the beauty about things like this, I love to have my initial instinct proved wrong, because then ultimately you end up with another pairing you normally might not necessarily have tried. So actually, when it comes to this, take a risk, roll the dice. What's the worst that's going to happen? You're not going to enjoy it, but you might find something exceptional.
Yes, you could. Right, we're going to have a quick moment to talk about how matching works, right?
Yeah.
So there's a theory that matching can be lovers, friends, or enemies. Okay, so friends is when the food and the drink in your mouth, they don't interrupt each other. They just sit there comfortably, a bit of social distancing, and they're comfortable. You get the full flavor of each. They don't interrupt. The great answer of that is, if you've got a cheese board of 5 or 6 cheeses, that a drink that is a friend of the cheese can be more powerful than one that is going to make friends, is going to really disagree with some cheeses and bond with others. Then you have enemies, where the cheese and the wine or whatever it is really disagree with each other and bring out the worst in each other. So they exacerbate bitterness or bring out farmyard flavors or something like that. And lovers is where the 2 products in your mouth produce a new blend of flavors that is superior to each other on their own. And that is what we are theoretically looking for. Although I'm quite happy with friends, because at the end of the night, a nice bottle of brandy and 6 cheeses is a result.
Absolutely.
So do you have a view? I mean, if you would, apart from the sort of golden rule of go for the same terroir, how do you, Dhruv, look for matching? What is matching if you're trying to predict ahead?
So first thing, I've never paired brandies and cheeses before. So I'm very excited about this. I mean, what I think, if I'm thinking ahead, you kind of think, what are the general characteristics of both things that you're trying to do? And generally speaking, I think in most people's sort of experience of matching, it will tend to be wine with food. They'll say, we're having a dinner party, what wine should we choose with the starter and the main? And historically it used to be white with fish, red with red meat. And that's obviously come a long way and evolved a lot, and people are now experimenting with dessert wines and using dessert wines to go with starters. So you think foie gras with Sauterne is a match made in heaven. That is an example right there of lovers. When people say red wine with cheese, I personally think a sweet wine like a Sauterne is a better partner with most cheeses than a red wine.
Right
there. So I think about things that you like. What it will not do is if there's flavors that you just definitely don't like, pairing them probably won't make you love them. So stick to the areas of what you like. Then think, what are the general flavor profiles? What are the characteristics? If you've got a very sweet wine, chances are you don't want it to be so very sweet in itself. So you want a degree of contrast as well. So you need similarities, but you also need contrast for them to really sort of gel and mesh.
The way that we structure it when we talk about cheese is we split flavors into simple flavors, which are your sweet, salty, acid, bitter, and savory, the mouth flavors, and your complex flavors, which all that stuff that happens in the nose, your herbs, your spices, and all that kind of stuff. And our technical rule of thumb, as in this is a good guide to start with, is you want to balance out your your simple flavors. So if something has a lot of salt, you want to not bring salt to the table with the second thing. But in the complex flavors, you do often want to have a bridge, an overlap. So a little bit of mushroom in both or something brings really nice outcomes. So augment in complex flavors and balance in simple flavors. So that's the sort of the rule of thumb that we use.
And I think what you just said, Charlie, about your obvious ones about the sweet, salty, sour, bitter. It's that step back, which is the kind of floral notes, the mushroom notes, the kind of umami, all of the kind of nuances, which is where the real magic begins. That kind of little fizz starts to kind of go when you find the right pairing, and it's not at that kind of obvious initial basic flavors, but it's the devil is in the detail. It's when you start to kind of link those little nuances and other flavors that are almost secondary, but that's where the real kind of magic lies, I think.
Okay, let's go to work. Which one do you want to do first?
I'm tempted to say the Beaufort, actually.
All right, let's go. I've been nibbling on the Roquefort, and it's utterly delicious. I have a rule of thumb with Roquefort that, by the way, you need to lean in. Thank you so much, the Fine Cheese Company, again, for providing our cheeses. These are in awesome condition. They're doing a really good job out there of doing good cheeses online to sell. So Fine Cheese Company, legendary. Ruth, thanks very much.
But, just to sort of echo that, I've never had a cheese from the Fine Cheese Company that hasn't been absolutely perfect. And it shows the real mark of a phenomenal cheesemonger that know when to send stuff out. Cheeses can be over or under, but it's when they come out, and it's having that expertise in-house of how do we keep these cheeses, how do we keep them maturing at a rate controlled enough for us to send them out when they're bang on. And actually, that Beaufort is stunning, as are all the other cheeses I've ever had and regularly get from the Fine Cheese Company.
Are you a regular user?
I am a regular user, and they are one of our suppliers. They are one of our temper stockists, one of our kind of very best partners. So,
lovely. So you love them, they love you.
Well, I can certainly say I love them. I couldn't possibly speak for them, but
right.
I hope it's mutual.
Right, another top tip for tasters out there: put the food in before the drink, otherwise you dribble. Just a small thing there.
That's just a general rule for eating as well, isn't it, Charlie?
Mm-hmm.
And don't talk when you're doing it. Now, Charlie, are you still on the VSOP, not the XO?
I've opened both now because I'm getting curious. I'm a more is more kind of guy, so I thought that I would just bring it on. You just do VSOP versus the XO. You can see the color difference there is really quite substantial.
Completely different.
Yeah.
But you know what? That VSOP, wow! I think it kind of elevated. It's kind of there's a bit more kind of honey. It's kind of accentuated the sweet notes. It's not quite treacle. It's not as far gone as caramel or honey as treacle. It's more kind of honey. There's florality which you didn't get prior to the cheese. And almost when you've got something that's quite umami, which that Beaufort has, it works well with something savory and sweet. So you can put, and I think miso works with sweet as well as savory. And actually what it's doing for me is really enhancing those sweet notes in that VSOP.
I'm agreeing with what you said, but I'm going to add to that. I think it's depressing the dairy. I think I'm getting less cream notes, less milk notes.
Yeah.
And I would describe it as becoming more spicy, but spicy in a food sense rather than that alcohol sting. You know what I mean? That kind of alcohol kind of moment.
I was just going to say, it's sort of making it, all those top notes seem to have gone. The sort of a lot of the lactic stuff has gone from the both, and you're down into that deeper, more mellow territory.
Yeah,
everything's become a bit more sort of smooth and silky, and it's a bit deeper. And I absolutely love it. I genuinely love it.
I think what you're getting there is not better or worse, but different. We're getting a new experience that pushes. I think that the silkiness that you're talking about, that much softer woody flavor, the honey notes, those kind of things are at the expense of the dairy of the cheese. But those are flavors that you will enjoy, particularly towards the end of the meal. They are end of meal kind of like the like a truffle, like a brandy truffle at the end of it, except it's not a chocolate truffle, it's a cheese truffle.
Yeah. But you know, it'd be interesting if you serve this. You know, you could serve that both quite happily as your cheese board with a glass of port, tawny, or a glass of Sauterne. But you could also serve it with that brandy, and the net result is completely different from the cheese, not just the pairing.
All right, let's do Jamie.
Okie dokie.
Right. Now, the reason I brought this in is because this is quite a punchy cheese on the British in the British canon, but it's got no sweetness, and I wanted to see how the brandy would interact with it on that basis.
I mean, Montgomery is an absolutely stunning cheddar.
I don't want to be rude, but I think that crashes and burns.
With which brandy?
The XO. Okay, right.
Wow. What? Yeah, with the XO, absolutely not. It's accentuated that alcohol spike. It's bringing out kind of all these kind of nasal.
Oh, Jesus!
Just behind the sinuses. And it's actually making the cheese taste very salty.
Yeah,
it's knocking out a lot of the complexity out of the brandy.
Yeah. The savory is just hanging on by the skin of its teeth. All the complexity of the Montgomery's is gone. And it's just making the worst of the brandy. It really is.
That said, it fares a lot better with the VSOP than the XO.
Let's go. Okay, so less of a train crash.
Correct. I don't even think we're in crash territory here.
You like it?
I don't find it unpleasant.
Okay.
I don't mind it at all. I found that the XO and the Montgomery, all of the positive attributes of both kind of knock each other out.
I'm not going there. No, I think this could be a good example of stay local. The brandy might be able to physically be sold in this country and be very tasty, but it's not blending with our style of cheese.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Right. That's rather sad. Right. Let's try the Roquefort.
So start the Roquefort on its own. You said you've been nibbling at this all day, Charlie.
Not all day, for about the last hour. Waiting for you to find a computer where the microphone works.
Now, straight off the bat, my concerns that I had before today, just by tasting the Roquefort, have been enhanced and multiplied tenfold.
So you're very concerned now.
I am. I mean, you know, when you talk about with pairings, you're looking for the sort of friends and lovers, ideally, where what you end up with is something that's greater than the sum of the parts. The opposite of that, obviously, when you're talking about enemies, is you end up with two things that you love deeply that you end up momentarily disliking intensely.
That moment where you've got two friends of yours who are very close friends of yours, but they've never met, and you think they love each other, you know, and they meet each other and they hate each other.
University friends, school friends, put them together, they always hate each other. Always. Uni and school, because they each have, you know, whatever the reason. But, so I'm going to try the cheese again, because we should probably talk about the cheese before we do any tasting of the...
So this brandy is distilled and produced up on the Loire, quite a lot higher than where the Roquefort is coming from. My taste for a good Roquefort is I like to be able to press it against the top palate and have it momentarily resist and then break through, and then it leaks all over your mouth with wonderful spicy sheep's milk flavor. And this is honestly one of the best Roqueforts that I've had this year. It's fantastic.
But there's so much going on with that anything you want to pair with that, I think, would have to play second fiddle. It would have to play support to it. Something that would work with it, because it's so big and bold and intensely full of, well, there's saltiness, there's savouriness, there's a bit of spikiness in there. You know, I want with that something sweet. I want sweet wine, a dessert wine. I'd quite like a port, a tawny port.
Well, we just had a comment from Alison. Just tried brandy with blue cheese, crash and burn. So you think it's not going to work. Alison has just tried it and it doesn't work. We have our professional requirement to try it. So let's go.
The SOP first.
Did you just burp live on camera?
No, I said I said to express. Do you know what it's doing? A bitterness is coming out of nowhere. All of a sudden, there's a bitterness and a metallic quality which I don't like.
Okay, for me, that is a lot better than the cheddar brandy combination. I'm not being bashed back against the wall by that, as you described, alcohol spike. What it's doing for me is it's making the brandy creamy, which is not unpleasant. I'm enjoying that. But what it's not doing is allowing the Roquefort to be all that it can be.
But that was the VSOP, wasn't it? Not the XO.
Yeah. All right, well, let's go with the XO.
This is what I'm more concerned about.
It's not brilliant, and you're right. The interesting, the VSOP is better match of the two relatively.
Correct. With in this context, and I think you'd expect that because there's less complexity to it, there's less character to it. It will work with more things in sort of harmony with them. Whereas the XO is by nature more complex. It's got a lot more going on. So you've got more elements to try and combine, which is unlikely to happen.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So the XO wants to be the boss of the room. It wants to be the loudest person, the funniest jokes, that kind of stuff. Whereas the VSOP can be more diminutive, sit more comfortably with other people, and in that sense, it's got a better chance of allowing the Roquefort to shine. Okay, I'm assuming you have it frozen.
I think so, and I think that's what happens. Like if you have a top chef come and cook you one, have I frozen?
Yeah, no, I can hear you.
Turns in freezing. I think when you're talking about food and wine pairing, you always want one to and complicated a dish. You want the drink pairing linear to sort of work with it as opposed to clash with it.
Okay. Right, I've got one more cheese here, which you don't have in front of you, but I'm going to go with this. It's the Gouda. I specifically wanted this because I thought the sweetness was the strongest sweetness. I wanted stronger. So the other end of the spectrum from the cheddar. I'm going to need a little bit more of that.
Well, Charlie, you're showing off with your fourth cheese. I'm going to show off with my third brandy because I've been sent some Remy's cask finish collection.
Okay.
Which is aged in Cabernet Sauvignon casks, and it's even darker still.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I'm gonna tell you what I'm getting with the Gouda. The Gouda is like a rock, and the tide just doesn't reach the top of the rock, so it just tries to be dominant, and then it washes back, and then your mouth fills with Gouda again. So I'm from a cheese point of view, the Gouda is the one cheese here that dominates the brandy. All the others, the brandy is king. And I think from a perfect match point of view, the Beaufort has the most interesting outcomes.
I would agree.
That is interesting. And
sorry, I was just going to say, Charlie, you know, we've tasted 3 cheeses, but I suspect if we stuck at this with more cheeses and different styles, we would find some real winners. So, you know, I was a bit skeptical when we discussed this initially, and I said, look, I'd love to be proved wrong, but shown that there is merit. And I think we've shown that there is definitely reasons and grounds to explore this further. Parmesan, or, you know, a young sheep cheese, or I think what we've established is that it's definitely not one to rule out, that brandy, cognacs and cheese is a thing, and I think could well yield some real good pairings.
I very much enjoy the time you would do that, right? Because you're sitting there at sort of 10 o'clock, 11:30 plus time of night. You're interested in having good conversation, challenging conversation, because otherwise you're going to fall asleep or, you know, that kind of thing. So I think that it's a time when these big pieces, these big brandies are at their best because you're receptive.
Yeah, and it's something a little bit different. You know, I mentioned this to a few people. I said, oh, you know, Charlie and I are doing a brandy and cheese pairing, and they kind of went, that's unusual. I've never thought about serving cheese with brandy or pairing cheese with brandy. So it actually starts that discussion, and then, you know, ultimately it's no different to pairing any other food product with a drink. Why is it different to charcuterie and wine, or beer and cheese, or any other pairing that we've done? It's just slightly less unusual. It's slightly more unusual, but maybe because less people drink brandy or cognac. I don't know, but I'm intrigued enough to definitely spend more time and effort.
Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of homework here.
Yeah, basically, Charlie, all I'm saying is it's been quite a long time since we've had a good chinwag and a few drinks, and I think this has made me definitely want more.
Yeah, no, I do think that. I mean, what about charcuterie? Do you think charcuterie and brandy is a thing?
I think, again, my instinct would be to say no, because the level of alcohol and the sort of punchiness of flavor, I think, would actually be a bit of a bully, and would steamroll a lot of the charcuterie. I think you'd have a funny interplay between the fat and the alcohol. What have you added to that?
Just water.
Yeah, I mean, it should work like a whiskey, in that when you add water to a single malt, you open it up, and a lot more breadth of those kind of flavors comes out.
When I was working for P&O Cruises, I was doing this presentation on matching British cheese with British beers, which was very much enjoyable. I mean, there was a Scotsman there who was a specialist in matching whiskey with cheeses, and he was of the view that 33% alcohol, as in about a quarter, 1 water to 4 whiskey was the best ratio. For me, it's about 1 to 1. And then the flavors really break open.
They do. And if you imagine all of those flavors compressed onto a pinhead and you put that pinhead in your mouth, they're all too compressed to try and access them. But you make that pinhead the size of a boiled sweet, and all of a sudden there's a bigger area and you can actually take on more of the nuanced flavors. So, yeah, by all means, I think adding a little water to a spirit will open it up and will probably make it more conducive to being paired with a cheese.
That is completely different. All I'm adding is water, and it's completely different. It's much, the smoky notes you were talking about. Anyway, we could talk about this all night.
And we have.
Well, we've reached the witching hour. I hope the people out there have found this interesting. Matching brandy with cheese is something people have done for as long as it's been brandy. And it's definitely something that you have to be careful of, because if it goes sideways, the brandy will just win. Choose your cheese as well. Make sure that they've got a bit of punch. It appears that our learnings are keep some sweetness in the cheese. Without that, you lose. Don't go for something too complex, because the brandy will knock most of the complexity down. And things with the Alpine cheeses we've got here, particularly is Beaufort, that's win. That's got the strength, the complexity, and the sweetness of Echo to really go down. Do you want to add anything to that, Drew? No.
I've just had a huge bite of cheese.
Okay.
You've encapsulated and summed up my inane witterings of the last half an hour beautifully into a succinct, seemingly intelligible sentence or four.
Well, I am merely a filter to your genius, Drew. That's
You've said that many times, but the word genius has been replaced with something that I daren't utter on here again.
Yeah, but it was late and I didn't mean it. Right. Lots of love to you. I'm going to sign you off. Drew, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah,
it's been a complete pleasure as always. And next time we have some alcohol, someone's offering us some whiskey, so maybe we'll try that.
Done.
See you soon.
Take care, dude.
Oh, I cut him off halfway through saying take care. Right. It's time for me to say goodnight. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. I hope you found that interesting. Brandy is a complex and interesting drink, and matching it with cheese is something that is a late night pleasure. But as we've shown tonight, the right cheese really works. The wrong cheese totally goes pear-shaped. Right. Next week, we have Juliana from the Old Cheese Room. She's going to bring on her Baronet. She's based down in Nesta Farm in, I think it's Wiltshire, although it must be near the border with Somerset. A lovely farmhouse, farm shop based on a big estate down there. She's Hungarian. She's lived in America. She's lived in the UK. She worked for you, Neil's Yard. So she's been around the houses, and she's bringing her own cheese to the table. We're going to be tasting through them, talking about her experience. It's going to be very interesting, although no brandy next week, just cheese. So train with the Academy of Cheese. We've got lots of e-learning that you can bond with and improve your cheese knowledge. Or as I always say, you can train with me live on the TV, which my next course begins on the 1st of July. So see you then. All the best. Happy travels. Bye now. See you next week.